I wanted to do a different introduction video, specifically on why I'm doing this. Simon Sinek what is a leader in many aspects, and business leader, speaker. So one thing I learned from the military was to look to subject matter experts, and in mental health I look to world experts. And so one of those is Simon Sinek, and I learned a lot from him, like the Semmelweis reflex, and specifically here on why, his video on why, I don't remember what the actual video is titled, though it's all over YouTube, one of the most watched videos on YouTube. So why am I doing this? When I was younger, I wanted to die, and I thought it wouldn't be a senseless death, that at the very least I could die for my country in the military, and I thought at least there'd be some honor in that. So I survived all the struggles for the sole purpose that I might die in battle with honors, and to help somebody half a world away, either a neighbor in domestic operations like fighting fires, the ice floods, or the ice storms, or the common Manitoba floods, or any floods, natural disasters, domestically at home, and or in war and combat abroad. So that helped me survive the suicidal ideation. And after I'd been to Afghanistan, then my shift or move toward surviving my own struggles and ensuring others wouldn't have to survive what I had. And no matter my suicidal ideation, trying to survive so that others wouldn't struggle like I had. So I would survive suicidal ideation at any cost, so that others wouldn't have to struggle or survive what I had. So that's a lot of what motivates me today is to help others. Like before, though today, I think the mission's the same. The goal is to help somebody half world away I never met. When I was younger, I was willing to give my life so that somebody else wouldn't have to struggle. Today, I was going to survive suicide at any cost so that others wouldn't struggle. And so that's a lot to do with why I'm doing what I am. Today, I'm definitely, I'm reluctant to say that I'm definitely over the suicidal ideation, because that's a constant battle with all I need is bad news or And I'll shift gears a little bit for a minute and talk about, I'll quote Chris Voss, one of my favorite world experts. He says people would rather die than be embarrassed. And another important point on that is Chris Voss says people would die to maintain autonomy. People would rather die than, he says, people would die to maintain autonomy. So they'll survive, they'll do anything to have their freedom. Those are some of the, maybe, I don't know if they're more important. It might be, I feel they're the most important things to consider in suicidal ideation. And so I can't say that I'm completely over the suicidal ideation, because all it takes is somebody to try to have control over me, and I think, or if I feel I would lose control over myself, I think would be a point of maybe a passing thought of suicidal ideation because of the feeling I've lost control. Another is embarrassment, like Chris talks about. And so people around the world have answered the question, might have been worded differently, though it's been asked in almost every language around the world, and everybody around the world rather die than be embarrassed. So if I ever feel embarrassed, that suicidal ideation is almost like a natural thing. So I think the challenge is to overcome the embarrassment, and having help to overcome the embarrassment, and or to maintain autonomy. And so I can't say that I'm over the suicidal ideation, though I think I'm in a better place in life where I'm no longer really struggling with those kinds of thoughts, though. And I just realized YouTube will probably dock me for using those words. So in the future, I might try to upload this video, though in the future I'll have to use different words. And so what else can I say? Why am I doing this? So that others don't have to struggle like I have. And yeah. Yeah. Why I should close on the 3 phases of why the most important is helping others survive, so that friend of mine committed suicide, bunkmate in Afghanistan. And Jeremy Willett. His only, I think that touches on the Chris Voss's point on autonomy. People would rather die to maintain autonomy, and so people would die to maintain autonomy. So the only thing Jeremy wanted was to help somebody half-world away he never met. And the military was taking away his freedom to help somebody half-world away he never met. He'd broken an ankle, and our chain of command insisted he return home to heal in Manitoba, whereas Jeremy was more than happy to die if it meant helping somebody half a world away he never met. Those are his words. I think that's the proper, I'm going to be arrogant and say, feels like that's the proper definition of the ultimate sacrifice. In World War II, everybody served best they could. Seems the numbers were broken into thirds. About a third of the world died in combat or parts thereof. A third of the soldiers survived for everybody around the world, and a third stayed at home helping those in combat. And so I think it's a human nature instinct, is that we're all capable to lay our lives for somebody we never met. I think that's how deep our need to serve is, to serve others. And so how am I going to do this? By researching the world experts like Simon Sinek, Chris Voss, others on different subjects, and putting that puzzle together has helped me recover from schizophrenia, which seldom times, little recognized as being schizophrenia being a traumatic injury or symptoms of traumatic injuries. And whether it's for soldiers are 14% more likely to be, combat soldiers are 14% more likely to be diagnosed with schizophrenia. And so there's many university students, some like doctors, engineers, and foreign students are more likely of university students, doctors, law, and foreign students are more likely than any other university students to be diagnosed with schizophrenia. Those are high demanding fields of study. So I would suggest those students were not prepared for the high demand on them and the stress. And so how am I going to do this? By studying the world experts. And so some world experts talk about schizophrenia is traumatic stress. And so how? By looking to world experts. What am I offering? Different view on mental health and treatment. And that all sounds crazy. Especially coming from somebody who was crazy. At my worst, I literally walked in circles talking to myself. At my worst, I didn't know my name, date of birth. I was obsessed with subtracting 3 from 8 because the answer I usually got was, sometimes it was 7, sometimes it was 9, and it was usually always either, my answer was usually either 7 or 9, even though 3 minus 8 cannot equal 9. For whatever reason, that's the answer I sometimes got. And I was obsessed with it because I couldn't get anybody to help me understand or help me subtract, explain. I couldn't get anybody to explain to me that how to subtract 3 from 8. Nobody understood it. Nobody could explain why I couldn't subtract 3 from 8. Nobody could explain why the answer I usually got was 7 or 9. And so at my worst, I couldn't subtract 3 from 8, and it was, I don't know when it started, though. My obsession with trying to subtract 3 from 8 started about 2021, and it was 2023 when I finally was able to know that the answer was 5. So about 2 or so years, and or maybe more. I think it was longer than 2 years because there's many things I couldn't do through 2020, 2019. 2019, my mental health really started deteriorating fast and hard, and an example I seldom talk about is how I've put water in my fuel tank. I don't know why I did it. I can't explain it. But I think that's what led to the motor being seized. And, but I couldn't, by that point I couldn't shower anymore. There's many things I couldn't do by January 2019, and and so what am I doing? Why? What and how? What? Yeah, so how am I gonna do this? By doing videos, by doing a speaking tour, public events. I've got a business coach. I intend on starting what in the military we called lesson plans and teaching points, talking points. So I intend to talk about the Chris Voss skills in communication and different points on mental health and how communication, Chris Voss skills apply in communicating with people struggling with mental health. I intend to have my own podcast and be a guest on different podcasts. where I myself would be a guest on different podcasts, and I would also host my own podcast, inviting guests on my own podcast. And YouTube, and like I'm doing now, public speaking events and teaching classes like Chris Voss does. That's how, some explanation of how I'm going to try to help others, and what. I should expand on what by talking about what. What am I going to do? What am I doing? Trying to help others. And what am I going to do to help others? What am I going to do to help others goes back to Chris Voss. Chris Voss changes how we talk, listen, think, and ask questions. Chris Voss discovered how to make people happy to consider the information you give them. And I continually fail to do that. I'm trying to learn, practice, rehearse those Chris Voss skills. And and that's what I'm going to do, is change how I relay that information. How I'm going to try to change how I convey that different information using Chris Voss skills. So now to try to end on a positive note. Chris Voss, so this is how I'm going to end on a positive note. Chris Voss quotes Oprah Winfrey. Oprah said, "In on a limo, out on a limo." And he explains different things about how Oprah ended any interaction. There's no matter if there was some hard feelings, Oprah did everything she could to make sure that they were ending on a positive note. And so Chris goes further into it by explaining you can make mistakes starting a conversation. So if I'm gonna pass on one thing from this video, is it's why. Back to Simon Sinek's why. Why am I doing this? Is if there's one thing you can learn from this video, it's to always end on a positive note. Even if you make mistakes throughout in the start, always end on a good note. Like Oprah says, like Chris Voss does, Oprah does it. Why? The last impression is a lasting impression. And so you can make mistakes, end on a good note. I'm gonna sound crazy and ridiculous to ask you to practice this with everyone, everywhere, all the time. With every interaction you have, always try to end on a positive note. If you could learn that from this video, I mean, how stupid is it to think that the world could be a better place if we learn to end every interaction on a positive note? Thank you.